Well, good evening. I'm BJ Hansen, and we welcome you to the Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum, specifically tonight for competitive races in Tuolumne County that will be on the June primary ballot. In 2 days, this coming Wednesday evening, we'll have a similar event for candidates in Calaveras County. For today's forum, all the candidates for Sonora City Council, Tuolumne County Supervisor District 2, and Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools have been invited to participate. In the Sonora City Council race, there are 2 seats becoming available as both the incumbents, Colette Such and Jim Garaventa, declined to seek re-election. The top 2 vote-getters in the June primary will win the seats. All 4 of them are with us tonight: Kurt Bryant, Suzanne Cruz, Darren Duez, and Andy Merrell. Later on, we're going to hear from the 2 candidates running for Tuolumne County Supervisor District 2, the incumbent Ryan Campbell and the challenger David Tichenal. And the final segment will feature the Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools race. The challenger, Zachary Abernathy, declined the invitation to attend this radio forum, but we will hear from the incumbent, Kathy Parker, who accepted the invitation. So we're going to kick things off with the Sonora City Council race, and how it will work tonight is that each candidate will receive a couple of minutes to provide opening statements. Then there'll be a series of questions that I pose to each of the candidates, and later some questions from the community, and then we'll wrap up with some closing statements. So we're going to bring in now and welcome the 4 candidates who, again, are running for Sonora City Council. Around the table this evening, we have Kurt Bryant, Suzanne Cruz, Darren Duez, and Andy Merrell. So I'm going to start first with opening statements, and we'll begin with Kurt Bryant.
Hello. My name is Kurt Bryant, and I'm running for Sonora City Council to be your next city representative. I think the best way to start this is by explaining a quick little story I learned today that I think explains a whole lot about why I'm running for Sonora City Council. So I'm a teacher's aide at Soulsbyville Elementary School, and I'm also a yard duty there. So today, a group of young people were playing soccer, and what inevitably happens when a bunch of people are playing a game? Someone gets left out. And why is that? Well, typically when someone's left out, they feel frustrated and they just want to leave. And I think that's exactly one of the main issues that I want to address as a city councilman. Our young people do not have something to do here, some way to be part of our community. And I think as a young person, I'm 24 by the way, I have to strive to keep our young people local. A lot of my friends move out of town, move out of the state even, for jobs, for different adventures that they simply don't get here. So my role would be to provide jobs, to provide housing, create the footwork so that our young people have something to do here. Currently, a lot of our young people actually hang out at Walmart. Sorry, a little plug there. And I think a great deal of this also falls down on one major issue, and that is, of course, fire. And I think that alone could also open up that opportunity I'm talking about. More jobs, more involvement for our young people in our community. Thank you.
And that was Kurt Bryant. Now our second candidate, Suzanne Cruz.
Thanks for having me, BJ. I'm just going to start off by saying that my family moved here in the 1970s for my dad to work on that Steveno Bridge, that beautiful expansion bridge. My work history is that I've worked as a deputy sheriff here in town, and later in my life, I've transitioned to business consulting. I hold a Bachelor's of Science degree in public administration. I continue to learn about best business practices, and I just recently completed an MBA business certificate, a program for that to help businesses grow. Why I'm in the race is because I have a lot of life experiences, a lot of work experiences, a lot of business experiences, and I would just like to share them with my community. And at the end of a long life of experiences, it's just your civic duty to go out there and share what you know. So I will end it there and pass it on. Thank you.
And Darren Duez.
Hello, everyone. I'm Darren Duez. I'm running for Sonora City Council. Some of the things that have gone on in the city definitely draw attention of where we need to be as a community, and I think that we've lost track of a community that we can all be part of. There is definitely ways to discourse and have that very efficiently and get done. The reason I'm running for city council is there's a lot of problems, and we need great new ideas to start solving some of those and being proactive instead of reactive. Businesses here, we need to promote them. There's a lot of businesses that are barely hanging on, they're barely getting by, and as a city, that's 35% of our budget is the taxation that they get off of that. The transparency, how hard it is to get a hold of anyone at City Council to be able to have a talk or conversation and get an understanding of the decisions and why they make them and what's best for us. Some of the homeless situation needs to be tackled. I think that we have been stale on being able to do that. I think it has got a little better, but I think there's a long way to go, and we need some great ideas. We can't continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. Budgetary with the city, if you look proactively, next year we're going to be at close to a $15,000 deficit. The year after that, we're going to be even more with the debts of CalPERS and wages and everything. How are we going to solve those problems without increasing taxes? That is one of my biggest goals, is to be able to have a budget that works with no taxation, standing for businesses. Thanks, everyone.
And Andy Merrell.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Merrell. I've been a resident of Tuolumne County for 2 decades, which the overwhelming majority of my life, seeing as I'll be 33 at the end of this month. In my years here, I've spent a lot of time hiking through our parks and forests, participated in 4-H, helped friends raise animals. I'm an avid gardener myself. And I'll be looking forward to once again participating in the Motherlode Roundup Parade this coming weekend. Marched many times with the Bobcat Band and the Golden Regiment proudly. I earned my degree at the Berklee College of Music in Boston in performance, and I'm currently finishing my master's in music education at San Jose State. And I made the decision to come back and make a living here myself as a professional musician and educator. And my main focus in my campaign is to try and help our community come together in harmony so we can make some very real and significant progress in areas that I think need attention. I don't think fire is foreign to any Californian, and certainly not any Sonoran after the Washington fire last year. So, I've been evacuated myself. I've helped my friends evacuate from Calaveras and Mariposa County, so I'm no stranger to the very real struggle that puts on people here in our community. So I'd love to increase public education, because I have run into a lot of people that actually don't know the first thing about fire safety and how to prevent it in the first place. I'd like to do that through grassroots efforts, through groups like Firewise to raise awareness. I'd love to develop some evacuation plans to ensure that every resident of Sonora has a designated evacuation route and knows can reduce response times for our brave firefighters and peace officers. And lastly, just want to support our local arts community. Might be slightly self-serving, but that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you all for your opening statements. It's great to see a full slate of candidates running for a local office in the city of Sonora for the city council. We're going to now move to the question and answer portion of the evening. There's a minute and a half to answer each of these questions. I'll give you a cue when your time is running short. I'm going to start with Suzanne Cruz for the first question, and we're going to rotate who goes first each time. And this first one is in regards to homelessness. It's a growing issue in the city of Sonora. What do you feel is the best approach to address it?
Thank you for the question. A continued results-driven efforts between the agencies that deal with this problem, the county, churches, state, DA's office, mental health institutions, and the many nonprofits that address this issue. Modeling our efforts on success stories such as San Diego, who has seen a 20% drop with an accountability initiative first and not a housing first initiative, means that individuals have skin in the game. We've made strides. We've started the Resiliency Village on Big Hill, and on Stewart Street, they've just purchased a building over there. So I'd like to see us keep going in that direction, working collaboratively with all those other groups that I'd mentioned. San Diego the government believes that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, that government actually should take a subsidiary role to mitigating these profound human needs. So dialogue encourages innovative ways about handling this homelessness problem.
And now moving over to Darren Duez. Same question. What do you feel is the best approach on homelessness?
We need to take a step back and look what's not working. We need to attack this on a pillar system and know what we have. We have a mental health, we have addiction, we have a financial, we have housing, and we also have a trauma that we don't talk about. Getting counselors into locations. What I believe we need to do is take them out of the city's purview and the county's purview and take them to non-governmental organizations where these pillars can be put to good use, where we have 2 tribes that are building behavioral health centers here where they could get get the medical care that they need to start those processes. Working with our partners, we can start to take a real big dip in 8-hour sessions of a day, or a 2-hour session, or a 1-hour session, where you can start working through some of the homeless problems, and we can start to get those people back on their feet where they need to be. The financial portion, the addiction portion, the mental health, and the trauma, we all have to work on every one of those pillars to really get it to succeed.
And Andy Merrell, same question. What is the best approach on homelessness?
I firmly believe in a housing first situation. I myself have been fortunate enough to never suffer from homelessness. However, in my work as a musician, I know how difficult it can be to live out of a car for a few days at a time and have to rely on inconsistent public resources to, look presentable and to hold down a job. It's really hard to not have a home base in order to be a productive member of society. And I look to the very successful Resiliency Village headed by Mark Dyken, who has been a mentor of mine for a very long time. I've done a lot of charity work with him over the years, both for raising awareness for homelessness and also helping Native American reservations down in Arizona on the Beauty Way tour. So I definitely believe that a collaboration between public and private sectors is the ideal approach, taking advantage of our public health services, which I think have been just excellent in the last few years. And the fact that Kathy Parker, who is running for Superintendent of Schools, really emphasizes the importance of mental health and addressing issues like addiction and things like that, I think it would be fantastic.
And Kurt Bryant, your thoughts, best approach to address homelessness?
I think that right now we have a fantastic group or groups of people who are directly working to mitigate the effects of homelessness and to help the people who are currently facing homelessness. One of the steps that I would like to take to mitigate future, events of this nature is to address schools. There are situations, Mark Dyken presented this the other night, is that a lot of the trauma that goes into homelessness starts in young ages. So by tackling that first to prevent future homelessness, I believe is the best way to eventually get to a real solution in this. But tackling what's there now, we need to support our organizations that help mitigate the effects and help individuals get back on their feet, provide the infrastructure so that people can get jobs and out of homelessness.
Well, the next question, we're going to start with Darren Duez, and it has to do with the city's decision to regulate and limit Airbnbs as a way to free up more long-term rentals. What's your opinion on that issue?
So some of the Airbnbs definitely are getting taken advantage of from corporations purchasing houses and setting them up for retail. They're just turnkey, making money. Some of those situations here are good. We do have a booming industry of tourism here. Speaking with some of the business owners here, some of their customer base is 40 to 50% of that. So having locations to stay where we have the hotels and things like that are filling up. So the Airbnb really does need to be in. There is a catch-22. Does it go where corporations mass come in and buy up the housing so that we don't have housing for residents? Do we go back to the drawing board? Should we do a lottery system? There's a few ideas to really come through, and we can work on that to do it. But saying, should we outlaw, should we allow, should we get rid of, it all is based on the tourism portion, and getting places to stay is more difficult. We need to have some available Airbnbs for TOT taxes and people just to be able to come and stay. Our businesses are doing very poorly, and they could use some of that financial saving from people coming in and from tourists. Thank you.
And Andy Merrell, same question. Your thoughts on the city's decision to regulate Airbnbs?
We do need some form of regulation. I remember the early days of Airbnb. It was sort of intended as a way for private homeowners to rent out a couch or spare bedroom, and it's since grown into an industry that has kind of been ripe for corporations to come in and make dollars at the expense of the people that actually live in the community. So I've been following the issue, and the city of Atlanta, I believe it's Atlanta, recently proposed some interesting legislation that requires Airbnb renters to actually be residents of the city. In this case, it would be Sonora. I would love to have a requirement that if you're, have a first or maybe even a second house, you would have to be an actual resident of the city of Sonora, which I hope would limit outside influences coming in and driving up housing prices. And at the same time, I want to respect people's property rights. I'm a strong believer in if you own a house and you own the property, you should have a right to use it as you see fit. But of course, everything needs limits and reasonable guidelines. So I would like to see a reduction in outside influence and start helping real residents make some money here.
And Kurt Bryant, your opinions on regulating Airbnbs in the city?
Sure. While campaigning, I've actually spoken with a couple of the folks who used to have Airbnbs in downtown who, of course, lost their contract and to be able to do that. They voiced a lot of their frustration of not being able to use their property for ways that they want. Unfortunately, I have not spoken with anyone who owns an Airbnb that is, so to say, a corporate entity. There's a lot of just folks in downtown that I think want to have an extra source of income. There's some legal things that I've learned of why we've had to put a cap on Airbnbs, which I can touch on at a later time, but there's still a way around it. I think by having more housing, we could have more Airbnbs. So that opens up a lot more opportunities, like I've said before, with having more housing for young people to move here, but also allow opportunities to have Airbnbs here so our tourists can be attracted here and have more time at our events.
And Suzanne Cruz, your opinions on regulating Airbnbs in the city?
Well, I've had one, and now I actually live next to one, so I'm kind of an expert in on that. The Airbnb industry is a new challenge for cities grappling with the same question. How do you balance a person's right to profit from private property and a person's right to be able to enjoy their home without the unplanned noise that comes from a short-term rental? It's a great question. The current board put up a moratorium on any further short-term rentals until they hear from citizens. It can be lifted, but they need to hear from the citizens. What are their solutions? We need to weigh them and come up with a viable answer.
We thank you for your answers on that question. We're going to go to the next one, and we're going to start with Andy Merrell for this particular one. And if you're keeping track of the overall time spent at city council meetings over this past year, likely the issue that was discussed over the most time was the Social Equity Committee. One council member who's not seeking re-election stated at one of those meetings that this upcoming election would likely be about the Social Equity Committee. I don't know if that's true or not, or why any of you decided to run, but I'll pose the question. Do you feel that the Social Equity Committee was a worthwhile exercise and end result for the city?
I do think it was a worthwhile exercise. It's a basic lesson, I think, in human dignity and respect. A common criticism I heard was that it was so focused on racism when I think there's a lot of other facets that go into social equity, whether it be your economic background, how you might identify your gender-wise. I do think it was a very worthwhile thing because people have criticized, we should be talking about other things. But, I think from a basic human dignity standpoint, I would rather be talking about it in a civil, official way than fighting about it and being detrimental in public, so to speak. I fully supported it.
And Kurt Bryant, over to you. The Social Equity Committee, was it a worthwhile exercise and end result for the city?
I think it was a very worthwhile part of our city. Kind of like the story I started off with, I think its purpose was to voice the frustration of those individuals who have been left out. And I believe that a lot of the folks who even voiced disdain towards the currently held statement from the Social Equity Board is that its heart is in the right place. However, some of the execution still makes people feel left out. So I feel that we should venture more on terms and statements so that we can establish that, so to say, tranquility with all of our members of the community and find the best solution for all members of the community.
And Suzanne Cruz, over to you. Social Equity Committee, was it a worthwhile exercise and result for the city?
No, it was not. That is precisely the reason I got into the race. The proper role of government is not to legislate morality. Our founding fathers knew that, and that's why they tried to rein it in. The reason many issues like the moratorium on the Airbnbs were not discussed and sidelined was because this took up so much time. The Declaration of Independence starts off with, "We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights." Thomas Jefferson wrote that. I don't know what the other two people on the board thought that by rewriting the city documents would make somebody want to read that when they could have read something by Thomas Jefferson, which was way more eloquent and to the point about us being equal and endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, regardless of our skin color. Thank you.
And Darren Duez, same question. Social Equity Committee, was it a good exercise and result for the city?
So I was on the Social Equity Committee. So I think it was nice to actually sit down and have a teachable moment to where we can come together and disagree on some things. I think some of it was great. Some of the things that were not wild. It took 18 months to get out the document, which I think could have been done a lot faster. There's a lot of time and effort that went into city money that went into that. We're 3x3 square miles. I think that it could have been done better as a community outreach group or community group involving the county, which I feel a lot of people were left out. I've made friends from this, people that I normally don't talk to. I've sat through conversations with people that I never would have talked to probably in my day-to-day life, and it's been good conversations. Most people come to the table and say, all we want is a fair shake, and we got to listen to that, and we had to listen to that, and that was what we did. Some of the people that were very optimistic about it had some very valid points because they didn't see the side that the other side is seeing from. So when the people got together and started having conversations, we really realized we're on the same side. All we wanted was a statement against racism, that we don't stand for it. Unfortunately, with the way that it went, it didn't come out just like that. It went a little longer. Thanks.
And now we've got one more question I'm going to ask before we go to questions from the community. The downtown district is in many ways a hub and the heart of the community in Sonora. Are there things that you feel could be done to make it better? And that question will go to Kurt Bryant first.
I think that there's still a lot of growth for downtown. Like I've mentioned before, right now we do have one youth sort of outlet right now, which is the toy store has their new room, which provides essentially a little game room for people to socialize, and I think that's a fantastic new outlet in downtown. Something else that has been acknowledged by a lot of folks in my age group is that there's still nothing that meets our liking. There's a lot of bars downtown. Not all of us like to drink, but say a more young 21 range bar. And then there's just other events that are missing from downtown. We've talked about a bike race that could happen, something that really brings a lot of the community together to sort of, be more social, be young, and have some good times.
And over to Suzanne Cruz, your thoughts on ways if the downtown district could be improved.
Well, I believe in the free market and less government. Rather than think of ways to encourage business, I would actually like to think of ways we could keep from discouraging business by reviewing maybe some overregulation. I know that I've seen it firsthand. Many of the businesses complain about being overregulated. If we could review some of those outdated, burdensome ordinances, I think that would release the economic engines that they need to flourish.
And Darren Duez, ways to improve the downtown district.
We could use more community events. More events create more people downtown. You could get out and meet and greet with your neighbors. Angels Camp has a real good program where they do a Sikh cook-off. They do a chili cook-off. Even San Andreas has that. The CHP I think went in like 3 years in a row right now on that. What we need to do is do more to get feet on the streets downtown. Businesses will benefit from it. People will benefit from it. The camaraderie of what we have will benefit from it. So more events where we have now, Second Saturday is great, but it's once a month. And we have Magic of the Night. That's once in a while. We have 2 typical parades. That's twice a year. We need a little bit more of like a community coming together. We could do that spring, fall, winter's kind of out, but we need to come up with ideas where we could put feet on the street and hands shaking. Thanks.
And Andy Merrell, your thoughts on improving the downtown district?
First of all, I just wanted to say, Kurt, the Little Roots toy store and the recent expansion that Casey and Kristen have bought. It's not just for kids. I myself went there and played some Magic cards and Dungeons and Dragons, and I love what they did. But in terms of improving downtown, I've identified some areas, and actually Kurt has as well. Specifically, the Dome, Beretta Street would be one, and even Washington Street itself could really use a bit of a renovation while also preserving the historic architecture and heritage of the area. I remember probably over a decade ago, there was something called Vision 2020, and it's really stagnated. And that's, if I were to get elected, I would love to kickstart that project because I think it's a shame that we've only been able to close Lineberg Street and haven't been able to increase some outdoor seating areas, improve walkability in some of our sidewalks and stuff around town. And I look at projects like the Dragoon Gulch hiking trail and would love to see an expansion of beautiful areas that celebrate the natural splendor that we have here, and also promote initiatives like the Blue Zones Project, promoting healthy lifestyles and enjoying the treasures that we have here.
We're now going to move to questions that were submitted from the community. We have some great questions that were submitted. We're going to start first off with one that was sent to us from Leanne, and Suzanne's going to be the first one, Suzanne Cruz, to answer this one. Leanne would like to know, she would like all of you to talk about fire mitigation strategies and how the city can support neighborhoods staying safe. So, Suzanne Cruz.
A lot of people have been very concerned, especially after the Washington Street fire. It highlighted some problems that we have. The old conversation of the Greenlee Hill bypass has come up again. I know it was discussed for decades, and I know it will impact several families. We're talking about eminent domain for those families. They're all citizens too, so their input is going to matter. We've had some people suggest evacuation route signs. But the thing is that we have to think about the Paradise Fire. I recently went to a 2Care presentation, and one of the cattle ranchers said he lost 80 head of his cattle. They also said that the heat and smoke was so bad that you actually couldn't read an evacuation route either. So there are experts out there I've listened to at 2Care. There are people who would be impacted by our decision, who own land. There are people who could not find evacuation routes. We need to pull in everybody's opinion because this is going to impact everyone. But I am very aware that we did get a big scare with the Washington Street fire, and the community wants something to do about that.
And over to Darren Duez, fire mitigation strategies and how the city can support neighborhoods staying safe.
Our community is in a really wild urban interface. For conflagration fires, we need to have some basic ideas of mitigation that go around and way to put that out to the public. We also need evacuation routes, yes. I believe there are talks about doing signage for areas that are very clustered to get out of, Crystal Falls, places up the hill, down the hill. For Sonora, we need to talk about what people can do for fireproofing, hardy plank, stucco, spray-ons. There's actually a new saltwater spray-on that makes structures that start to make them so that they're kind of fireproof. What we need to do is really back our experts, our fire chief, our police chiefs, those people that come up with these programs. We can say great things and we can come up with great ideas, but these guys have been in those jobs for 20 years and they know what fires do, and they've been on big fires and they see and learn from those strategies. So to support them and make sure that we have the equipment and the training and the people possible, they are our first line of defense. Everything after that is just an evacuation. We do need clear roads and avenues. The Greenlee expansion is there. There'd be a great new way to have another avenue for people to leave. So right now you only have about 4 ways to get out. Thanks.
And over to Andy Merrell, same question, fire mitigation strategies, how the city can support neighborhoods staying safe.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ditto what everyone else said about the Greenlee Road extension. I actually spoke to one of the property owners, Justin Rizzo Weaver, who raised some concerns on eminent domain. because we would have to take people's land to build the route. But I think in terms of the name of public safety, it would be very much worthwhile. And again, to talk about improving downtown in the city of Sonora itself, it would also be a great opportunity to incorporate more walkability and other parks potentially as included in that project. But I think at the end of the day, what really matters most is public education on how to prevent fires in the first place. And I've been very supportive of the FireWise program because it supports individual neighborhoods to come together and identify areas of risk, whether it's, having someone designated to go around and do some weed whacking, making sure that houses have, defensible spaces and things like that. But I would also love to see a lot of collaboration between the city council and our local firefighters and supervisors like David Goldenberg, who has years of experience fighting fires, to come up with concrete evacuation plans. So we have essentially simulations of how much traffic would need to be mitigated, safe places for people to go, and get that information out to all Sonora residents.
And Kurt Bryant, your thoughts on fire mitigation strategies and keeping communities safe?
Sure. We, of course, got lucky with the Washington fire. We all know that the wind wasn't very fast that day, and luckily the fire crews were able to cut a 6-blade length fire break between the fire and the city. That was in an emergency setting that they were able to complete that, monument of a task. Before fire season even starts, I think that we need to work with our professionals and volunteer groups to establish preventative measures towards fire fuel reduction. I've worked with Jason with one pile at a time, and I've seen what a small volunteer group can do. We can accomplish a lot with very minimal tools and create more fire prevention in the future. And I think that's going to be something that's not going to allow fire to continue in our city, and I think it's something that's worth our while to build more community efforts of that nature.
And our next question was submitted from Michael. It's in relation to the Sonora City Council sometimes works closely with the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. There are 5 supervisors: David Goldenberg, Ryan Campbell, Anaya Kirk, Kathleen Half, and Jaron Brandon. Michael specifically would like to know, what Tuolumne County supervisor would you say you most align with politically in decision making? And Darren Duez will get that question first.
So I've talked to a few of them. Decision-making processes are all difficult. We all think that we can move mountains before we get in there. And then you have the realization that there's rules and laws and things that we cannot do. I've talked to Ryan Campbell quite a bit, where I believe he would probably align with me in my most ideology of how we do things. I think he's got a great plan for some of the things he puts together. I spoke with him this morning and talked a little bit about some of the city. The thing I'm most proud of is the city and the board are working together, whereas years past they've been at each other's throats pretty much, and it hasn't been a great working environment. But they're basically our big brother. We have to work with them to come up with solutions and situations. I have talked to Dave a little bit, definitely about the fire stuff. I've talked to Jaron just very briefly a few times about things, back and forth question answers. Kathleen, I've emailed twice, I think, with situational questions and got back to her. Anaya, speak with his dad, but I haven't got to speak with him, but he's obviously really busy with a new child, and family comes first sometimes. So I think with Ryan, that would be probably my ideology. Thanks.
And over to Andy Merrell, same question. Question submitted by Michael, wants to know who you say you align with most politically on the Board of Supervisors.
It's really tough to say, but I would have to go with some combination of Ryan Campbell, David Goldenberg, and Jaron Brandon. Jaron, just because I love the infusion of youth into our local politics, which I feel was needed for a very long time. I admire Ryan Campbell's ability to balance budgets and write grants to bring additional funding into our county. And I got to say, David Goldenberg provided a lot of firsthand inspiration for me, because he was one of the only candidates that has ever come and personally knocked on my door when it came to canvassing, which proved to me the very real impact you can have by actually going and having conversations with people. And plus just his dedication to fire prevention, I align 100% with, and look forward to working with him in the future.
Over to Kurt Bryant. Again, the question was, who do you feel you most align with on the Board of Supervisors?
I'd say my alignment falls between Jaron and Ryan, similar to what Andy said, is Jaron brings a lot of young points of view to the county. I, of course, also managed his campaign when he ran, so I have somewhat of a working relation with him already. Ryan, I have always admired his family style of governance. He's always puts his family in his mind when he's making decisions. So as I approach the city council, I would obviously want to work with all members of the county board, David Goldberg, closely, but also get fantastic ideas from Jaron and Ryan on how to do things such as fire fuel reduction and other cooperative measures to support the city.
And same question for Suzanne Cruz. Who do you feel you would align most with politically on the Board of Supervisors?
Most politically, Anaya Kirk. He has a firm understanding of our constitutional republic, our form of government here in the United States, free markets, which means they're unfettered by over-government control, limited government. That means that you keep limited government in the parameter of the design of government, which is not to legislate morality, that we are the masters, we are self-governing, individual liberty, and personal responsibility. We're also designed for self-governance. So those are the four cornerstones of our constitutional free republic as our four founders wrote it. And I think Anaya Kirk really understands that. Maybe second, maybe Kathleen Half, maybe third, Ryan. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, thank you for answering all those questions. We're now going to go to the closing statements portion of this part of the forum, where each candidate has 2 more minutes to make any final comments or talk about anything else that didn't get addressed during this question and answer period. Since we started with Kurt Bryant at the beginning, we're going to go the opposite way around the table. We're going to go with Andy Merrell and then work our way back. So closing statements from Andy Merrell.
Well, seeing as I ran out of time the first time, I'll try to keep it short. At the end of the day, I want to do what's best for everyone in Sonora. I want to help prevent the town from burning down, and again, through fire prevention. I want to make sure that the homeless have a safe place to stay where they could get the resources they need to get rehabilitated. I want to find affordable housing for families that would wish to move here and build lives here. I want to promote our arts and cultural communities by celebrating the rich, multiracial, and diverse history that we have here in this area, seeing as it's Cinco de Mayo today. The very first one was actually celebrated just down the road in Columbia, which I think is a great little tidbit of history. And finally, work on public infrastructure, things like walkability, building more trails, improving our sidewalks, and kind of giving our downtown area a little bit of a facelift.
And Darren Duez, closing statements.
Some of the things I would like to work on is our budget. I think we're close to insolvency if we don't pay attention and start doing things a little more fiscally responsible. With no money to do any of the public safety or any projects, we are no more city. When I make decisions and how I'm going to vote is who it helps and who it hurts. If the greater good is the bigger portion of who it helps, I'm definitely going to vote for that. If it's a negative, I probably won't. One of the big things is I'm a small business owner. And business gets left behind. Only during elections do people reach out to the businesses and say, hey, what do you guys really think? I want to put together back the merchant committee we once had so the businesses could get together and kind of figure out what they need. Some of the cleanings in the sidewalks, some of the stuff that's not getting done. Some of these businesses are very, very on the brink of going out. That's a huge portion of our community. Just because they don't live in city limits doesn't mean I don't stand with them. If you're not on Main Street, you're not our redheaded stepchild. I want to make sure that we take care of the people that are on the off streets. We got to get back to civility. We got to get back to transparency, and we got to get back to just being able to speak for our constituents, standing in front of the decisions that they want us to make, taking those arrows and responding accordingly. Thank you.
And Suzanne Cruz, closing comments.
I'm going to kind of hang on the coattails of what Darren just said. I just couldn't agree with him more. The founding fathers of this nation designed this constitutional republic for citizens to rule themselves, self-governance. After a long life of experience, citizens are expected to take up their civic duty and participate and to share their knowledge. So everyone here at this table is a citizen. We're not leaders. We're going to be voted in because you like our ideas align with yours. And so we need to hear from you because you're a citizen, we're a citizen, and we all want to live in a better community. I did talk at length with a very large group of people in the community are very concerned about the dome. Building a strong community requires these tiny little mechanisms that spill out into the community, like selling tickets and putting on fundraisers. Quick, fast money like marijuana and grants don't really build a sense of community. So many people would like to resurrect that big, beautiful dome. It's a project worthy of our time and our attention. It would be nice to see Sonora High donate it back to the community as a regional arts center. And so I think that's it for my closing statement. I've enjoyed living here, and I know a lot of the 30-year-olds around here went to school with my kids, and I'd like to continue this family-oriented community. Thank you.
And Kurt Bryant.
I'd like to basically close off by saying I've been fortunate to run for this position. It's been a great lot of fun going canvassing, talking to a lot of folks about the issues in their area. I hope that if I'm elected, I can continue to listen and strive to solve a lot of those problems. I think a lot of the issues that I'm looking for have been voiced here tonight, and I hope that I can continue to serve everyone here in our community. If you'd like to vote for me and see a young person in office who has the energy to go out and work and serve, please vote Kurt Bryant for Sonora City Council.
Well, thank you all for taking part in the forum. Again, those were the candidates for Sonora City Council: Kurt Bryant, Suzanne Cruz, Darren Duez, and Andy Merrell. The top two vote getters in the June primary will win the seats. The Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum featuring the Tuolumne County competitive races will continue after a quick break with the two candidates for Supervisor, District 2. And we welcome you back to Clark Broadcasting's Candidates Forum, tonight featuring the competitive races in Tuolumne County on the June 7th primary ballot. We now move on to the District 2 Tuolumne County Supervisors race, which covers the areas around Soulsbyville, Willow Springs, Phoenix Lake, and Cedar Ridge. We have the incumbent Ryan Campbell and the challenger David Tichenall. They will both give opening statements followed by questions that I came up with and then some questions that were received that were submitted from the community. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer those questions. If one of the candidates directly attacks the other person in their response, that person will be allowed 20 seconds to respond if they so choose to. At the end, the candidates will also have a couple of minutes for closing statements. We're going to start now by learning more about who both of these candidates are with opening statements. They both have 3 minutes, and we'll begin with Ryan Campbell.
Well, thank you very much, BJ. And I also want to thank the residents of Tuolumne County and specifically the people of District 2 for electing me in 2018 and giving me the opportunity to serve my community. And I've really found over these past, almost 4 years that the adage that when you serve your community, you get more than you give, it's absolutely true. I've experienced that in my time serving our community, and I've had the opportunity to do things that very few people get to do. I'm raising 3 daughters in Tuolumne County. They all go to public school. And so to have the opportunity to be able to improve the community where they're growing up and where they're able to grow and thrive is something that's really rare. And I take it very seriously. And I tell you, I've done my best over the past 4 years, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done. I think that if you do a direct comparison between where the county is now and where it was when I began on the Board of Supervisors, we are in a better position. We're stronger. There are more opportunities, and our county, and by county I mean where your taxpayer dollars go, is in a more healthy position than it has been in decades. And so, with that, I'm filled with purpose and energy and optimism for the road ahead. Just kind of to look back at a little bit of some of the things that have changed over the past 4 years. When you consider where the county budget was in 2019, 2020, when was my first year on the board, we were struggling. Every year for years, we had cutbacks, we had layoffs, we were experiencing $3 to $5 million shortfalls in our county budget. Well, last year I was chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and as chairman, I was also chairman of the Finance Committee. And that doesn't sound very exciting, but the reason I mention it is that we were sort of the leaders in developing a new practice for budgeting in our county. And so we went from, having budget shortfalls to restoring programs. For example, our Tuolumne County Library System. It's been almost a decade since it was open for 6 days a week, but we were able to support the library. So now it's open 6 days a week. We had all of our branches closed for a period of time. Now they are all open. We purchased one new fire engine, and we have 2 water tenders on the way. We've reorganized our sheriff's office. And so there are a lot of good things that have happened in the past, and I'm looking forward to talking about them and kind of describing what a lot of the plans are for the future, including what to do with our Tuolumne General Hospital, which was closed in 2009 without any plans. So if you'd like to learn more about me, go to voteryancampbell.com, or, as always, check me out on Facebook.
All right, I'm going to go over to David Tichenall with your opening comments this evening.
Thanks, BJ. I'm glad to be here. Excuse me. I'm Dave Tichenall, and I want to be your District 2 supervisor. Our county has challenges that we have been facing for some time, such as fire safety and preparedness, underfunded law enforcement, the welfare of our children, homelessness, and job stagnation. We need to keep addressing these. Imagine some fresh eyes and out-of-the-box thinking. With new perspectives will come renewed energy and enthusiasm as we move forward together. My leadership skills and my empathic nature come from a 40-year career in business and also working with neglected and abused children as a foster parent. I get the socioeconomic complexities that we are facing. Imagine applying proven, common-sense solutions in the business world and adding that value to our problem solving. The simple truth is this: government is slow to react, and today's world requires agile and nimble actions. Assembling public-private partnerships is key to getting things done, and with your help, we will do that together. If you remember one thing about what I've said today, remember this: I am the candidate who will bring fresh perspective, a willingness to work hard, and foremost commitment to your personal liberties as we work together to solve our challenges. Please vote for me, Dave Tichenall, for your District 2 supervisor, and call me directly on my cell phone, 209-288-8323. I'm always ready to talk, and I will return your phone call. Thank you.
Thank you both for those opening statements. We're now going to go back and forth on some questions. First off, some questions that I prepared for this evening. Since Mr. Campbell went first with the opening statements, well, the first question will be for Mr. Tichenall. And we're going to start first with fire. What are your ideas for making Tuolumne County more fire resilient and prepared for future wildfires?
Well, I've been meeting with different fire people and getting lots of education. Of course, I haven't been in government before, so this is a real educational experience for me. And what I've learned so far is that previous administrations have been doing a pretty good job. They're out there getting us the shaded fuel breaks that we need and thinking about alternate egresses for some of our neighborhoods. Of course, if we look at Cedar Ridge, we only have one other way out of that valley down there, and that's up and over the hilltop. If Q and Mill Road is not passable, or if there's too many people. If we look at Willow Springs, we have Willow Springs Drive is the only in and out, unless you go up and over the top of Omen Drive. And I've been trying to I happen to be president of the Willow Springs Homeowners Association, so I've been trying to get the county and the state to look at doing something with Omen Drive where it connects with Highway 108. And we are making some progress there. We got Caltrans to clean it up. It became a dumping site, and with my leadership, we got that cleaned up. But now we need to make sure that we can use that as an egress should there be a fire and we can't get out onto Silsbyville Road. I will continue our agreements with Caltrans and move forward in making sure that we're doing everything that we can do for fire safety. We have to be able to have have a clearly marked evacuation route in all of our communities, and I don't think we have that right now, and I'd like to push forward and get that done too.
Mr. Campbell, same question. What are your ideas for making Tuolumne County more fire resilient and prepared for future wildfires?
Well, that is the central question I think that many people in our county are asking. That is probably one of the biggest roles and the thing I've spent the most time on while I've been on the Board of Supervisors. And in fact, it's one of the major reasons that piqued my interest in serving in the first place. People may not know, I served in the Office of Emergency Services for Tuolumne County, and I had a role in our county's tree mortality effort that removed dead and dying trees that posed a risk to our county for fire and for tree fall incidents. And so that was kind of how I made a name for myself, and that program was very successful. We drew in millions of dollars in grants at that time, and it was at a time when the state was ignoring rural counties with respect to fire safety. And they're not ignoring us anymore. I think with the catastrophic fires that have destroyed so many communities in our state, that they're finally stepping up and taking notice. And so there is tremendous amount of opportunity to acquire grant funding to fill in the gaps in our county. And anybody that tells you that there's one right answer to fire safety doesn't know what they're talking about. There's a variety of issues that you need to deal with. One is just equipment. So I I led the way in purchasing one new fire engine, and then we have 2 new water tenders on the way. I also have been a leader in working with the Forest Service in terms of some of the shaded fuel breaks in the Cyril project, which covers Cedar Ridge. And so I have a great deal of experience in this area, including being chairman of during the Washington fire. And
I have to interrupt you there.
Okay.
Ryan Campbell, time is up.
I could talk all day about that issue.
All right, 90 seconds up on that one. We'll go to the next question and kind of a rapid fire with these questions here this evening. Next one is in regards to economic development. It goes to Ryan Campbell first. There's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to direction right now. Several years back, the city and county decided to dissolve the Economic Development Authority, JPA. Now, Cole Prisabella recently resigned as the county's Director of Innovation and Business Assistance. What type of path would you like to see the county move forward on when it comes to economic development?
Well, yeah, and you bring up another good issue, and I think kind of the debacle that happened with the Economic Development Agency that was the agreement between the city and the county is part of the reason why I thought that I could get into the Board of Supervisors and kind of clean things up. And I think that we got there pretty close. I think that where we ended up with Cole Prisabella, who worked for us for about a year and a half, as the Innovation and Business Assistance Director, I think he did a lot of really good things. And I think we're in a position where we can build off some of those opportunities. For example, just the other day, the Board of Supervisors approved a major development on the SCAR location off Highway 120. And so there's no doubt that lodging, hospitality are going to be major economic drivers in our community for the foreseeable future. And so we're very much pushing for those types of opportunities in very tangible ways, including, that project and 2 others that were approved. Not only that, we have opportunities with, there's a pellet plant that is looking at coming into the county, and the Board of Supervisors has a role in approving that. So we're trying to get as many different industries and a mixture of economic opportunities as possible.
And going over to David Tichenall, your thoughts on economic development and its direction?
Well, economic development will never depend on whether you have one person in an office trying to drive that. It's too big of an issue. But we can't expect economic development to be able to take root unless we add the other 2 legs of that stool. And that is, we have to have people to do the work. And if we're going to have people to do the work, then we have to have workforce housing. Some people like to call it affordable housing, but I have no idea what affordable means because it's different to every person that thinks about it. So if we're really going to start increasing the revenue in this county, then we can never think about economic development as a solo monolith. We have to make sure that we're thinking about where we're going to get the workers and how we're going to keep them here, and what's going to attract investors and companies to come up here is going to be those 3 facts together, that we have the infrastructure in place and that we have the workforce and we have the housing for them. So that's what I'll be working on, is all 3 of those things.
Well, next question will be for David Tichenall. When you look back at the past 4 years and some of the decisions the County Board of Supervisors have made, do some stand out in your mind that you disagreed with?
Sure. The very biggest one right now has always been a sore spot with me, and it was a sore spot with me in 2018, and that is the gall of a sitting politician voting himself a raise. That tore me up back in 2018. I got up on the podium and and said, you can't do this. I don't care if they think they're not making enough money. That's fine. Figure out what is a good compensation for their job, vote it in, but then don't take personal benefit from it. Leave it for the next person to take that seat. And that was always my biggest gripe about it. It wasn't that they were voting themselves a raise. It was that they were taking advantage of it personally. So that's one of the decisions that I'll go ahead and talk about now.
And Ryan Campbell, before we move on to that question, do you want 20 seconds to respond?
Yeah, I have to respond to that because I actually share many of those views, and I've expressed so on the Board of Supervisors multiple times at least. Every time a raise has come up for a board member, I've voted against that. So I've never willingly voted for a raise for myself as a board member. I have that opinion. And I feel strongly about it. I am in the job for service and to make my community a better place, not to enrich myself.
All right, and moving on to that next question, as not all votes were 5-0, when you look back at decisions of the board over the past 4 years, are there some that stand out that you disagreed with?
So I was thinking about that, and I wouldn't, instead of looking at a specific decision, what I would say is one of the things that I would do differently. If I could go back in time, is I think our county missed opportunities with respect to the homeless issue. I think that we let opportunities, whether it's with Project Home Key or with some of these other endeavors that have come through the county, and I'm not going to let those opportunities go by again. I think I've learned a lot from where we've gone. I think that our Homelessness Commission is doing a fantastic job, and I'm not serving on that commission, but I 100% support the work that they're doing, and I think that they're going to come back with some great solutions to this extremely serious issue of homelessness in our county.
Well, staying with Ryan Campbell for the next question, are there any specific ways that you feel county government can be more streamlined and effective? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that was part of the reason why I wanted to join the board, is to reform our county. I don't think that we were transparent enough. I don't think that frankly, it was not a very friendly place for the public to interact. And there are still challenges, absolutely, but we're going paperless and using the OpenGov system at our community development department. So now if you want to pull, a permit for, whether it's a water heater or a new garage or something, you can do that online. You don't have to come into the county building, and you're not dependent on that schedule if you're a contractor. So that's a definite improvement. People that are looking for public documents, if you want to look up anything that the Board of Supervisors has done or any committee has done, all of that is available online, which previously it wasn't. In general, I think that our county is being much more efficient with its money, and we're taking a clear look at what our true priorities are, things like libraries, public safety, fire, making sure that we have parks and decent roads. These things are what I spend the vast majority of my time thinking about, and ways to make them more efficient so that we can squeeze every single dollar out of what we do.
And same question to David Tichenall. Are there specific ways that you feel county government can be more streamlined and more effective?
Well, everybody knows, or anybody that knows me knows that I am not a proponent of big government at all. And I see a lot of ways that we can start to make it more efficient. We have really good people that work at the county. They just need help in working smarter and getting their jobs done. We have cut, I think, everybody's department as much as it can be cut. They can't do anything else. And the fact that they're running so lean right now on people, it's starting to show, because there's cracks in the system. I have two business people that I've been working with. One of them, a restaurateur, been here for a long, long time, wanted to remodel his restaurant, and it was something that he thought should only take a month, and it ended up taking him more than 3 months. And another guy bought a business that was closed for more than 25 years, and even though the only changes he wanted to make were cosmetic in nature, no structural changes, he's been trying to get it through the county for more than 12 months. And that just means that that there's not enough people to do the work, and they don't have the right tools to get it done quickly and efficiently. And we do have an outmoded way of approving these things. We could be using things like, for simple approvals through the planning department, of taking pictures and sending those in, and then, the stuff that isn't clear, maybe sending somebody out there. But I think we can make people work smarter. We got good people. We just got to help them work smarter.
Appreciate your answers on those questions. We're talking right now with the two candidates for Tuolumne County District 2 Supervisor, Ryan Campbell and David Tichenall. We're going to now move over to questions from the community. We thank everyone who submitted a question to be considered for tonight's event. Anyone had a chance to email a question, and we had a number that were submitted. We're going to start with David Tichenall on this particular segment. He'll be the first to answer. And Mary would like to know, homelessness is a big problem in Tuolumne County. What do you plan to do about it?
Well, I kind of spent more time on the homelessness issue than on some of the other issues that I've been looking into since I decided to run. I went up and visited the Resiliency Center, and I've been actually working with some of the people that do excuse me, lost my train of thought. The Habitat for Humanity, sorry about that. And I think the best way to handle homelessness is not to grow government or to increase our bureaucracy, but certainly to let NGOs do the groundwork and be the force on the ground that is trying to fix that situation. Government's place should be in overseeing it, helping to secure grants and money, and just making sure that whatever needs to be done can get done, but not by hiring more people to be involved in that process. We need to leave that to the NGOs. So that's where I would spend my time is getting more community organizations and faith-based organizations to help out in that equation.
And over to Ryan Campbell. Again, the question from Mary, homelessness is a big problem in Tuolumne County. What do you plan to do about it?
Yeah, it's a problem in Tuolumne County, and it's a problem in every rural county and every county throughout the state of California, and it's a problem without an easy answer. So it's related to people's, whether there's an addiction issue, whether there's a mental health issue. And so because it's a complicated problem without one answer, there's not one solution. So one of the things that I would like to do with the next 4 years is repurpose the Tuolumne General Hospital. I mentioned it earlier. There are several benefits to this, and most of them will apply to people that are experiencing homelessness, or they're at risk of homelessness, or if they are experiencing a mental health care issue or a substance abuse issue. And that is to move all of the facilities that Health and Human Services provides, so things like early childhood development programs, like WIC, things that help young mothers, things that help people that are on Social Security. Right now, those services are provided in a facility that you, the taxpayer, pay $500,000 a year in rent on. We own Tuolumne General Hospital. You, the people of Tuolumne County, own that facility. It was closed in 2009 without any plan of what to do with it. And I want to open it up again, and I want to move the services that will help our homeless community into TGH. And it will take an investment at the outset, but after that, we're going to be saving $500,000 a year every year forever. And so it makes financial sense, and it makes sense serving the people that are most vulnerable in our community.
Well, the next question that was submitted comes from Ryan, and he would like to know your opinions on... it wasn't you, Ryan, but the same name, so...
Why am I so handsome?
In full transparency, it was not you. But he would like to know your opinions, both the candidates, on whether the county should allow marijuana cultivation and dispensaries. And Ryan Campbell, you are first on this question.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on this. I've talked to my counterparts in other counties. I spent a lot of time actually talking to board members in other parts of the state of California. And I really haven't seen that cultivation is something that has a net benefit to communities. In some places it does, but it carries with it a lot of baggage. And I think that there's not enough direction from the state and the federal government for counties to be able to set up a system whereby we can have commercial cannabis cultivation without it burdening our already stressed system. So, I mean, if we were to have that, we would have to hire new inspectors, new this whole apparatus in order to be able to maintain it. That being said, there might be a time in the future where some of these issues are resolved, where cultivation could be more viable. I think right now the cannabis market isn't very favorable to that, but down the road it potentially could be. The second part of the question was about dispensaries. I think that the majority of the people in our county are open to the idea of dispensaries. And I think there probably is a role at certain locations. There's one in the city of Sonora. I think at least one or two more coming online in the city of Sonora. And there's a potential for that to work, I think, in different areas of the county.
And David Tichenall, same question. What's your opinion on whether the county should allow marijuana cultivation and dispensaries?
Well, my quick answer is no, we shouldn't allow it. And let me talk about why. When I ran in 2018, this was one of the third rail subjects that really got people either upset or angry, or it really had a lot of emotional response to. And here we are 4 years later, and we've been able to watch a lot of communities and counties who have gone this route. And we've seen that, one, they had to grow their government in order to be able to regulate it and keep an eye on it. And two, they have taxed it so much that they've driven the industry back underground again. And so their ability to continue what they thought was going to be this tax windfall is just falling off. So all the projections, they went out and hired inspectors and police and bureaucracy to support it, and now the tax base has fallen off. It just doesn't make sense. We can have distribution points and dispensaries, but we don't need to supply an already oversupplied market. And so I think growing the cultivation in Tuolumne County, we have much better uses for our ag land than that. And so I'm going to always be against that part of it. And I think we have to be realistic as what the future of it is, what that trend line looks like. Because from what I've been reading up and down the state, people are now buying from the black market again because taxed marijuana is just way too expensive. And there's no future in that.
Well, our final question from the community this evening is coming from Richard, and he referenced that Tuolumne County has the worst roads in the state, according to a recent report. He would like to know how you plan to address that issue. And David Tichenall, you get the first crack at that one. Yeah,
that's a sad medal to have to wear out there, that we have the worst roads in the state. Roads are a very difficult issue. My opponent, Ryan Campbell, knows that as well. And there is no easy fix for it. We know that the costs aren't really containable, and the revenue that we get from taxes isn't really realistic to be able to fix our local problem. We're always going to have a pretty good state highway system, and all of the feeder roads are probably going to be good, but it's the local roads that people are really angry about and what they want to have fixed. And so there's got to be either a new source of revenue, or we have to come up with a more realistic expectation of what our roads are going to be from here on out. I hate to say that we can't do anything, because I don't believe that's true. I think there are solutions out there, and I think a good free market system will always fill a need. And so as we move forward, there's going to be new solutions that come up that are affordable and that counties can take a look at. But right now, we really do need to get with the state and figure out how do we get more of that tax money. And the other thing I'll talk about is EV charging stations. There's a new one going in Tuolumne County on the South County. There's going to be more of them here. Electric cars are here to stay. Yet I don't know of any good mechanism for getting the taxes out of those EV stations. They impact the roads as much or more than gasoline cars, but we have to figure out a way how we're going to get that money into our roads.
Ryan Campbell, going back over to you, that same question, referencing that the roads in the state of in Tuolumne County are the worst in the state. How do you plan to address that situation?
Well, I'm doing it right now. So probably second to fire, one of the issues that I spend the most hours working on is improving the state of our roads. I'm on the Transit Commission. I'm on the Transportation Committee. And I look at this issue very frequently. And for years, and this is very specific to District 2, our district was at the dead bottom of the list of road projects. And we got the least amount of money and the least share of the road fund going into District 2. Now, I changed that. We have had major projects happening in District 2. We purchased a pothole patching machine that was just the other day working up in Cedar Ridge. And these are very clear ways to improve the state of our road. I'm not going to rest until we at least improve the road situation. I think there are ways to do that. My opponent's correct in that it is extremely expensive, and there aren't any particularly good funding mechanisms to make our roads as good as they were 40 years ago. But what we've done is we've deferred maintenance for 30 years, and the roads have gotten worse and worse and worse. And I'm trying to turn that tide. We have a schedule of roads and a list of roads that are of most dire need, and one by one we're going to address them. And I am absolutely committed to that and squeezing as much out of the state of California for our road system as I possibly can. I've been to Sacramento a number of times to advocate for our roads. So I feel very, very strongly about the state of our roads.
End on that note, as 90 seconds just wrapped up there. I want to thank both of you for taking all those questions from both myself and the community. Now I'm going to move into the final portion here, which is closing comments. Each candidate has 2 minutes to finish talking about anything that was addressed earlier or make some closing comments. I'll start first with David Tichenal.
All right. Again, thanks for having us here, BJ. This is a really good for the community. It really comes down to, are you happy with the way things are? Are you happy with, it's like the old line is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? If you're looking for more change and a different direction in your government, if you're looking, like I always do, for a smaller, more efficient government, if you're ready to have fresh eyes, take a look at old problems, then I'm the guy you should probably vote for. Tuolumne County is a great place. I've been up here my whole life. I'm third generation. I can remember the county as it was in the 60s, and it was just a Mayberry RFD type place. And I've seen all the changes that have occurred over those years, and I'm not particularly happy with a lot of them. And I'd like to start doing things that bring us back to a smaller hometown feel than we've come to. We have to find a way to keep really good law enforcement. I know that our sheriff has a hard time with hiring law enforcement, training them, and then they leave for better pay and conditions elsewhere. So we have to solve that problem. I'm a huge law enforcement guy, and I'll work with the sheriff to find ways that currently aren't working, or find new and improved ways to make law enforcement a top priority in Tuolumne County. Same thing with fire. Like I said, I want to make sure that we keep our agreement with CAL FIRE going, and I also want to continue to look at these road issues. So, like I say, if you're ready for a pair of fresh eyes to look at this problem, and you want somebody who has your personal liberty at the top of my priority list, then I'm probably the guy you want to hire to do this job. So, thanks.
Again, that was David Tichenal and Ryan Campbell. Closing comments.
Well, I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I really want to thank the people that are taking the time to listen to this. It's a really important conversation, and we're talking about the fundamental things that affect our community here. And all I can say is that our county has undergone a tremendous reform in the past 2 to 3 years. Our county as an organization, our budget is healthier. We balance our budget without laying off employees or looking at closing fire stations or shutting the doors at the county library. And we did it last year when I was chairman of the board, and we're going to do it again this year. We're going to balance the budget without those kind of cuts and layoffs that we've done for decades, for at least a decade in the past. We cannot go back. We cannot continue to make the mistakes that were made in the past. We must move forward in our county. There are opportunities on the horizon, and we need to go toward them. When we talk about things like the sheriff's office, there was tremendous problems there with retention and recruiting good deputies. And we have a very strong sheriff's office, but I supported a reorganization of the sheriff's office this year. And I also have the support of the Deputy Sheriff's Association, which represents law enforcement professionals. And so they have supported the work that I've done to make sure that we have good law enforcement in Tuolumne County. And I really want to see it through to the future. As I said, we purchased a pothole patching machine. We have opened our libraries 6 days a week, which hasn't happened for a long time. I want to see that our roads have a strong advocate in favor of, one, getting money from the state, and two, making sure that money goes directly into repairing our streets and not some of these other projects that that could be done. I have the experience and the knowledge that I've acquired over not just these past 4 years, but my time as a emergency services professional. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Again, my website is voteryancampbell.com.
Going to have to end right there.
Okay.
Supervisor Campbell, thank you for coming on. We thank the challenger, David Tichenall, the incumbent, Ryan Campbell, for coming on this for this forum this evening, having an important conversation, sharing your visions and goals for the county. We need to take one more break. We're going to shift over to the county superintendent of schools race coming up next. Well, this is now our final segment of the Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum featuring competitive races in Tuolumne County. We heard from the Sonora City Council candidates and the Board of Supervisors for District 2 in the earlier segments. We're now shifting over to Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools. As I mentioned in the opening, this is the only race in which a candidate declined to participate. Zach Abernathy is not with us here today, but the incumbent who is seeking re-election, Kathy Parker, accepted the invitation. It'll be the same format as the earlier segments. She will start with an opening statement, followed by questions that I have put together, and they'll be followed by some questions that were submitted by the community, and then we'll wrap up with closing statements. I'll also point out again that she has not viewed the questions ahead of this candidates forum. So Superintendent Parker, feel free to begin with your opening comments.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, BJ, for providing this forum. I appreciate it. My name is Kathy Parker, and I'm running for re-election of Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools. A little bit about myself. I actually moved to Tuolumne County in 1992. I finished my bachelor's degree at San Francisco State, and I came up here to work for a seasonal position at the Miwok Ranger Station. And when I came up here, I instantly fell in love with the area. It reminded me of where I grew up, which is the northern panhandle of West Virginia. My dad was a coal miner, and this place reminded me a lot of it. When I was here, I actually took a position in November at Pinecrest School when it was owned and operated by Columbia Elementary School District. And there I became a school secretary, an instructional aide. Later on, I became a bus driver and maintenance, did everything at a small school. And when I was there, the teachers who were working there at the time encouraged me to go get my teaching credential, which I did at night. I drove down to Modesto in the evenings, finished my teaching credential, and then was offered and accepted a position at Curtis Creek Elementary School as a science teacher and a fourth grade teacher. And that's where I did all of my teaching. I loved teaching. I loved interacting with the students and parents and providing programs and developing educational experiences for kids. It was an amazing experience. And later on, about a decade into my career, I was asked to finish out a grant that was going on at San Joaquin County Office of Ed. And I accepted that position for half a year, what I thought was half a year. And that ended up being my journey into administration. After San Joaquin County Office of Ed, I was returning to Tuolumne County to begin back into my teaching career, and I was asked to come to Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools, where I accepted a position, was a director, assistant superintendent, associate superintendent, deputy superintendent, and eventually elected to the position I hold now. I currently work with multiple agencies that are regional, local, and also at the state level. I serve on 3 state and federal legislative committees. I have worked very hard to bring programs to Tuolumne County that support the youth of our county from 0 to adult learners. And I'm looking forward to having another 4-year term to continue that great work that we've started.
Well, I'll move in now to the question portion of the forum, and you have 90 seconds to respond to each of these questions. These first few are from myself, and my first question is, and it's 2 parts. When you look back at the past 2 years in which schools have been responding to the COVID pandemic, from a county superintendent of schools perspective, what would you say went well, and also what areas in hindsight could have been done differently?
Great question. I'm not sure if 90 seconds will be enough to answer everything, but the last 2 years have been the most challenging and the most stressful time in education, probably in over 100 years since the last pandemic. I think what went well was the fact that through those partnerships I have with state and local and regional partners, I was able to secure resources early for our community. We were one of the first counties to establish free testing for all employees that were required. So school districts never had to pay any money. In fact, we worked with our school districts for them to receive grant money in order for them to ramp up very quickly. They've never had to pay for PPE, testing, or any of the other requirements that were imposed on them by the state. Another thing that went well is we were able to be one of the first counties to offer all of our educators mass vaccination clinics. And that was done through partnership with Tuolumne County Public Health and other agencies, where we stepped up in right in the early stages of vaccinations to get about 62% of our educators vaccinated immediately. And then from there, we've had more that have received vaccinations. And that has enabled us to stay open. And in fact, we were one of the first counties to reopen and bring kids back to school shortly after Labor Day. Things that we could have done differently, I'm not sure what we could have done differently. It's really, we're still in the tail end of it. What I wish we could, and what I was trying to have the state do differently, was to really listen to the local voice about how Tuolumne County needs here are different from, for example, Bay Area and Los Angeles. So I don't know if it's different, but that was a frustration point for us.
My next question, many local students, data has shown, are facing challenges with things like depression, drug abuse, and thoughts of suicide. What do you feel can be done from a school perspective to meet those needs and reach students who are facing those challenges?
What I look at for that is that has to be a whole community response. And schools have, of course, a large responsibility to providing that support, not just to the children, but also to their families who are trying to support their own children. And so one of the things that I've done is I wrote, in the middle of a pandemic, I wrote a $2.5 million mental health services grant. It was a competitive grant. Only a handful were awarded to small counties. And luckily, we were able to receive that grant. We are now working in partnership with not only local public health and behavioral health services. We also have hired on our own mental health clinicians and navigators to help secure those services for our students, for our families, to bring those services into the school system during the day so that students have access to them. It was a crisis before the pandemic. The pandemic just simply really made this more obvious, took off some of those protective measures that we had in place. And we always knew we needed more mental health services. So we have been able to provide those. And we are currently working on another partnership with our managed care organizations to bring even more resources to our families.
My next question is looking out into the crystal ball. Say you are elected to another 4-year term. What do you anticipate would be the biggest challenges facing local education over the next 4 years, and how would you propose to address those?
Well, one of the things that we need to do is address learning loss. And one of the concerns that we have, and our state superintendent of public instruction has really taken a firm hand in this, is that we need to increase our literacy rates for our youngest children, our first, second, and third graders. So we really need to work on those skills of reading and writing and mathematics. They have missed a lot of school, and we need to really address those gaps. The other things, of course, I alluded to just before, was expansion of mental health services to reduce those impacts of adverse childhood experiences. We want to support all learners, especially our adult learners who are seeking traditional and alternative pathways to achieving high school diplomas or completion. That's an important gateway for them, and we need to continue to provide that. And that expansion of adult ed, which I've been doing over the last 3 years, is important. And then, of course, expanding all of those opportunities in career technical ed, which people might know as vocational ed. So we've expanded our construction, pre-apprenticeship programs, our visual and performing arts access for students, and bringing arts back into the classroom and into the schools, providing opportunities for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we're proud to say we're bringing back, I'm bringing back the Mad About Science summer camp that we do for a week in August, and that will be now open this year to all of our 3rd through 8th grade students in Tuolumne County. And finally, we have to really focus on preparing the youngest children, our pre-K and transitional kindergarten, our 3 and 4-year-olds, so that they have the skills to enjoy and succeed in school. We're looking forward to the expansion of those early childhood education programs.
Thank you for answering those questions. I'm going to shift over now to questions from the community. There was a lot of interest in this race, and we're going to ask several questions that were submitted from local residents. We're going to get in as many as we can. Again, 90 seconds to answer. Superintendent Parker, the first question comes from Jason, who would like to know, what is your position regarding consolidation or unification of the multiple school districts in Tuolumne County? He asks, if you support unifying school districts, how would you unify them? And if you do not support unifying school districts, can you please explain why?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. People should be aware that the county superintendent and the county board serve as the school district organization board when that petition either from the school boards arrives at their doorstep or if there is a voter-driven initiative to unify. And as such, it is really important that those bodies, the school board and myself that serves as that secretary to the board, remains neutral on that topic. It is an order, it is part of our democratic system that those systems remain neutral on this topic. We have to approach those petitions with no bias at all. So as an official position, I don't have I have no position on that. But I will tell you that there are opportunities, and we do have those opportunities and take them, where it makes sense to do things together as a unified approach. For example, something as small as doing a propane bid. So as a group of school districts that each are their own entities coming together and looking for a propane bid so that we can all pay the least amount in propane. Looking for opportunities to coordinate transportation so that we don't have buses crisscrossing the county, so that we can actually address some of the gaps we have in not having enough buses, not having enough bus drivers, so that we can support each other. We also unify under some things like insurance. And so we have a joint powers authority that not only involves all of the Tuolumne County school districts, but also involves some of our regional counties as well. So where there are opportunities to coordinate services, to come together under those umbrellas, we certainly take advantage of that. It's for efficiency and fiscal solvency. Those things are very important.
Our next question came in from Colleen, who would like to know, what education, qualifications, and experiences do you have for this position?
I've been in education for over 30 years. I mentioned earlier that I started in my career as an instructional aide and school secretary and then a school bus driver. I also did maintenance at that school site. I've also been a teacher. But when I look at the administrative requirements for this job, you are doing everything as a county superintendent, from making sure that districts are fiscally solvent for not just this year, but 3 years out. And I have that experience. Not only have I written budgets, I also administer budgets, and I also write many grants. And that requires a lot of reporting. Just recently, I reviewed all of the district's second interim budget reports to ensure that they are on track for fiscal solvency, and I've been doing that for years. I was part of the statewide committee to develop the Local Control Accountability Plan, which is a plan every school district has to write and connect that to their budget. So not only was I on the ground floor of writing that type of legislation and making sure that the pieces are in that report, I also am responsible for reviewing all those plans and submitting one from the county. It goes on, and that's part of what the job is.
Next question came in from Stephen, who would like to know, can you please describe your experience in managing complex fiscal budget oversight of state monies targeted towards educating children in Tuolumne County?
So not only are you receiving funding from the state in what we call LCFF, which is Local Control Funding Formula, which switched over a few years ago in order to allow districts to have more local control over their funding, we've noticed that there's been a shift in the state that they have asked for us to apply for more grant type of funding opportunities. And so you need to know how to apply for grants. You need to know how to be competitive against large counties like LA, San Mateo County, Sacramento County, because you're in the same competition pool as they are. And so part of that is being able to have matching resources, being able to demonstrate you know how to manage budgets as well. And so we have over the years have demonstrated my competency in that. I have also worked with school districts that haven't quite got to the point where they are having fiscal difficulties that would cause them to be in some kind of monitoring situation. I've caught that beforehand and given them the resources in order to get out of some situations where they have now managed to have fiscal solvency and strength. That's part of just the knowledge of that job. It's not just being able to check boxes. It's knowing when people need help, when school districts need help, and providing that support. And the other big piece is working with special education funding and making sure the state and feds actually fully fund special education. That is one of the areas that really needs attention and support in our county.
We had a question submitted from Jim who would like to know your position on critical race theory in the classroom. He also wants to know if you would pledge that gender studies be unavailable for students K-8 and that parents be involved in age-appropriate sex education instruction.
Parents are already involved in age-appropriate sex education instruction. We have curriculum committees, and that was through our health education curriculum that was adopted and continually is reviewed. And parents are invited and encouraged and sought out actively to be part of those curriculum committees. One of our struggles is making sure parents know and that they actually can come and be part of those curriculum review committees. I've had parents come into my office and ask to look at a variety of books. For example, I had someone come in and read the history book for 11th grade that we use and also Sonora High uses, looking for evidence of critical race theory. And after a few hours of reading that book, he came back to me and he said, "This is a really great American history book. This doesn't have any critical race theory in it." And I said, "No, I could have told you that at the beginning, but I wanted you to find it out yourself because critical race theory isn't something that's in a K-12 education system. It's just not there." I know there has been some thought that it's there or being snuck in through a different way, but there is no critical race theory. It is not. We're focused on teaching kids reading and mathematics, history of the United States, science. Those are the things we're focused on. Teachers don't have time to put in things like critical race theory. And gender studies, again, that is not something that is taught in K-12. So I don't know if it's a pledge, but it's just not part of our curriculum, and it's part of a job as a county superintendent is you help school districts access curriculum that is required and a course of study that is required by the state for K-12, and those things are just not present.
Kimberly has a question. How do you plan to meet the challenge of a continually underfunded special education system?
That's a great follow-up to what I was trying to get to before. So part of what we're doing is I'm working, again, at the state and federal levels. So the feds have said a long time ago that they would fully fund or they would fund a lot of special education required instruction. They haven't. They fund about 8% of special education, which is about half of what they promised. And so part of our job is to make sure that the federal government is actually funding what they are requiring. And the other piece is working with the state. And I have to say that we've been successful in increasing our funding for the state, from the state for special education funding and support. But what we're finding a difficulty with right now is finding people who can be in what we call the related service providers role. So those are our psychologists, our speech language pathologists, our occupational therapists, because we're competing with people who have private sector opportunities that pay a lot more than education. So driving our funds toward making sure that we recruit the talented people that we need working with kids is really important. So that's why we're pushing for some legislation to provide opportunities for those people who are going into those fields to have to receive grants for their education, to receive funding so that they can switch over into careers midway through their careers, and doing heavy recruitment for people to come to Tuolumne County to live and to hopefully work in our school system. Special education is near and dear to my heart, and I know I only have 90 seconds. I could go on for 90 days on this topic, so I'll stop there.
And then one more final question we'll put in here this evening. This was also submitted from a listener. What are your plans for serving foster and homeless youth in the community?
I have a lot of plans to serve foster and homeless youth. When I started at the county office, we weren't offering any foster youth services, and we had a very small homeless youth program. These are students who need a lot of support, and they need a lot of services, and they need it done in an innovative way. So I immediately sought out funding so that we could increase our foster youth services. So now we have not only 2 foster youth managers, we just brought on somebody who's going to serve our transition age youth, and I recruited her in, and I received funding for that because our 16, 17, 18-year-olds, as they age out of foster youth services, they need support into transitioning into the adult part of their life. And so we are doing that work. I'm doing that work. Homeless youth, I've increased funding for that, sought out opportunities. One of my people all know my dream, which is one of the things that we lack in our community is an emergency shelter for teenage youth. We need to have not just shelter for them if they need to have a place to lay their head at night. We also need all those wraparound services. So that is part of my next 4-year journey, is to make sure that we have that kind of service available for kids in Tuolumne County.
Well, Superintendent Parker, I thank you for answering all those questions. I'm now, like the other races, going to give you 2 minutes to make some closing comments.
Well, first of all, thank you so much again for having me come. I love talking to the community and answering their questions. Great questions that they asked. Part of what I'm doing in this job and for the next 4 years, and hopefully the next 4 years after that, is some of the real basic stuff. I want to make sure that I continue to support districts for fiscal solvency, making sure that they can meet their obligations 3 years out and provide rich educational experiences for all their kids. I really want to increase parental involvement in not just the local site, but also bringing them into the special education opportunities for their representation. We have a community advisory committee that we are constantly seeking parental input on. So we have the Special Education Advisory Board, the Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee. We want to help English language learner parents have access to education and make them feel tied and connected to their community. And we are hosting parent information nights on topics that are really important. We have one coming up on being aware of social media and the implications on youth. We just had one at Sonora High School where we talked about drug and alcohol use and around vaping, which has been a big concern with parents, and suicide prevention. I want to continue to promote wellness and safety for all our students. And that means everything from providing mental health services and support through social emotional learning to providing tobacco use prevention grants to address some of the vaping issues that we're having in a lot of our high schools and even elementary schools. And of course, suicide prevention and intervention. And finally, I want to preserve and grow those community partnerships. Sitting on the YES partnership has been an amazing opportunity to connect and bring those partners together. Now bringing in the county government in terms of behavioral health, public health, and now the Board of Supervisors. I think we're finally at a point in our community where we can move things forward and change the needle for all of our youth. And including that in that partnership are our law enforcement, probation, and district attorney, educators, parents. We're all part of this educational journey together. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll have to end on that note. Again, we thank Superintendent of Schools Kathy Parker joining us on this portion of the Candidates Forum. Again, we thank everyone who took part in tonight's Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum. Kathy Parker, Superintendent of Schools race, Dave Tichenall and Ryan Campbell on the Supervisor District 2 race, and the 4 Sonora City Council candidates, Andy Merrell, Suzanne Cruz, Darren Duez, and Kurt Bryant. I'm BJ Hansen. I was your host. Don't forget to vote in the June 7th primary, whoever it is you support, and we also invite you to tune in this coming Wednesday evening as we shift over to races in Calaveras County. We expect a very good conversation with the candidates in the Board of Supervisor and Tax Collector races. It will start at 6 p.m. We'll see you then.